Live from the Crazy Cap Studios, this is Fairy Fountain News for the week of September 15th, 2024. I am your host, Jaden, aka Slime Boss. Let's get right into last week's recap. Obviously, the PlayStation 5 Pro was finally revealed for a price of $700, plus that actually pretty decently looking design. That was probably the biggest headline news last week, and of course this is episode 1 of our brand new show, so we haven't exactly talked about it quite yet. So if you want to know our full thoughts on the PlayStation 5 Pro, you can check out last week's podcast, the 2024 check-in episode, where you can get more of our in-depth thoughts. But for the sake of this week's episode, I wanted to give a little bit of sort of clarification on. Now, obviously, I personally think that the price is outrageous, but realistically, what else do they really need to change about the PS5? I know everyone keeps complaining about why don't you just buy a PC for like the same price or a little more and you'll get an even powerful device? Well, of course, there's obviously still a lot of exclusives on there compared to PC, which there isn't a whole lot, but there are some. But there's not very much. I mean, we had a PlayStation 4 Pro around this time as well, so it's not like it's unexpected from Sony, but a lot of people are disappointed at like what exactly it's bringing to the table. And think about it, there's not really a whole lot that Sony needed to bring to the table with this one anyway, and all they did was pretty much remove the two separate modes that there are, being fidelity and performance modes, and just putting them together, because that was the PS5's biggest problem, is that it wasn't able to support the higher frame rates with better graphics. So that's literally all they really needed. Probably like a $600 price point, but at this point they probably should have cut the original PS5 and then launched this at like a $550 price point. But they're not even going to do that, because they actually increased prices in other countries, which is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not an economist, so I'm not really sure why. So maybe there is evidence to support that they needed to make this price hike for even the base model PlayStation as well. So if you're an economist out there, please feel free to join our comments and many other YouTubers' comments and clarifying that this is a justifiable price, because I want to give Sony the benefit of the doubt here, but it is a little egregious. But you know, how much lower can they really go when the base PS5 itself is still $500 and even more in other countries? So, you know, what's to say there? Anyway, let's get into our next segment, which is the releases for the week. Obviously, we had the big release of the Plucky Squire. This is something that I've been taking a look at for quite a while now. It has released on Wednesday the 18th, but we've known about this game for quite some time. If you're not aware of the Plucky Squire, it's essentially a Zelda-like, where you start off in a storybook, and then you get pushed out of the storybook, and you're in some child's bedroom desk. And you're able to explore the desk freely, and you're able to get different items from going out in the real world. It's a really interesting concept. I've seen the entire game at this point. I will say they don't really push the idea super far. It seems super basic, but I know they're setting up for a sequel, so it'd be fantastic to see those ideas pretty much fleshed out. And there's a ton of hidden collectibles and stuff, so that scratches that completionist part of my brain. So I'm really excited to check it out for myself, and I will be 100% streaming that at some point in the future. So check out my main personal channel whenever that goes live, whenever I go live with that. But what was really nice about the Plucky Squire at the time of it being, what was really interesting about the Plucky Squire at the time of it being announced is that we didn't know when it was coming out. And so for a long time we're like, oh, so the Plucky Squire is going to be like the only Zelda-like that we're going to get this year, because more than likely we're waiting for the Switch 2. But we were proved very wrong by the June Direct of this year, and we're also getting a new 2D Zelda as well, which is breaking conventions for even that series as well, so that's pretty fun and interesting to find out. The only thing that really sucks, though, is that both of these games are coming out back-to-back, and next week we're getting Zelda Echoes of Wisdom as well. So if you're a Zelda fan, you're eating good, but you're just getting a lot of content back-to-back. Also, the Plucky Fire. The Plucky Squire is fairly short, so you can check it out in a couple of game sessions, and for 100% completion, it's probably about 10 hours. So you can get that done pretty quickly. It's light eating, and then you're able to hop right into Echoes of Wisdom once that releases. Next up is Final Fantasy 16, finally released on PC. As you guys know, I'm a huge fan of the Final Fantasy series and what they have done, because I haven't actually played them yet. I haven't watched them all yet. So don't get it twisted. Like, I'm just a fan, I'm a spectator, and I'm really excited to hop into this series for the first time. And I have all the Pixel remasters on Switch. I also own 16 as well. It's on my backlog. I'll get to it at some point. But yeah, it's really cool that finally people are going to be able to play 16 on PC. I don't know why it takes so long for Final Fantasy to get to PC. I don't know if they still have a Sony exclusivity deal at the moment, but I know that they did at one point. So good for Final Fantasy fans. That's great. But speaking of another major first-party PC release, we also have God of War Ragnarok finally releasing on PC as well. Again, I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy 16 releasing on PC, not so much God of War, and we've been seeing a lot of PlayStation exclusives coming to PC. And I mean, if you're already having a problem with your exclusives not being on PS5 and still being released on PS4, why are you releasing them on PC? And for a lot of PlayStation fans and PC fans, this is great for them, and they're like, oh yeah, finally they're releasing PlayStation games on PC. This is not a good idea. I mean, especially with the whole Helldivers situation, this is not a good idea, personally. Again, once you build up that good foundation of good PS5 exclusives, and only PS5 exclusives, then later down the road, and I guess technically around this time, for Ragnarok specifically, then you start releasing them on PC, and never on other platforms. I don't ever want to see a God of War on a Nintendo console or a Xbox console, because that is what sets PlayStation apart. Those are exclusives, and even the technology that's in their systems. Just keep... a lot of people are like, oh, well, you shouldn't have those walls, it's gatekeeping, and it's like, that's the thing that sells your console. And a lot of people are complaining right now that PlayStation 5 just doesn't have any exclusives, and so you're shooting yourself in the foot by doing this effectively. Like, eventually later down the road, I would love for Nintendo games to come to PC or other platforms at some point. Not all of their, not like Mario, I don't want to see on PlayStation, obviously, but eventually later down the road, it would be nice to have a Mario game on a PC. I know that they would never do it, but at some point it would be nice. But again, stack up your releases on the Switch too, then 6 or 4 or 5 years later release those on PC, and do that for like a couple of your games, not all of them. Just give them here, give you a little taste, why not? And doing that, just breeds good consumer, just being a good company to your consumers. I forgot what the term is, and just giving them a little taste here or there, just throwing them a little bit here or there. That's all you need. Not all of your exclusives, and then not have any exclusives for yourself. So PlayStation 5 unfortunately didn't have that base ground standard. Switch obviously does, has a great library of games. And what was great about the Switch 2, or the original Switch, I should say, the Switch as well, is that not only does it have a great foundation of exclusive games, it also has a ton of ports and remasters and things that technically did come to other consoles, but it just made that library even better. And so that's the type of thing that you want to have, is that good balance of ports and remasters, and ports of other games from other systems, and of course your main lineup of games as well. Without that foundation, you got a PS5 situation. So anyway, let's get into this week's headlines. Obviously, we had the biggest piece of news that I think personally, again, this is mostly a Nintendo channel, but we like to cover a lot of different things here. I mean, we literally had a whole discussion about the PlayStation, right? But we finally are getting into physical Switch 2 leak territory, and it's quite a unique feeling, and it makes me feel very old, because 8-9 years ago, we were getting those NX leaks of that like little PlayStation Vita looking thing that we thought was the NX, and we're finally entering that territory with the Switch 2, and it feels so surreal. If you don't know, a Chinese subreddit user or some social media platform released screenshots and images of what the potential Switch 2 could look like, and a lot of people are like, we think this is real, it looks very official. I'm inclined not to believe it, just from purely the fact of Nintendo never just iterates on the same thing. The 3DS, yeah, it may look similar to the original DS, but there was some unique gimmick about it. And so far, we haven't really seen what that new unique gimmick is at the Switch 2. We may be seeing a new Nintendo here, but everything in my body just makes me feel like no. Like, there's no way that Nintendo just makes a literal Switch 2. And so this may be the shell of it, but we really don't know what that unique feature is going to be. We'll, of course, have our own prediction discussion, and I'll let you guys know when that video releases, when the time comes. But a lot of people are talking about how maybe they're finally bringing back that asymmetrical gameplay situation where the dock itself is a console as well as the Switch, and you're able to make those. So maybe you're able to like stream like things from your Switch and your TV, things like that, and maybe that could be the gimmick if it still looks like a regular Switch. Who knows? And again, I fully believe that there's going to be a lot of stuff that's built into the dock as well. Previous docks didn't really have that, but this Switch 2 leak in particular did not have any screenshots of the dock or anything like that. A lot of people seem to have the belief that the Switch 2 leak, like the actual model that was shown in those images, which I'm not going to be able to show, the actual model in those images was made by Nintendo. No, and the Chinese leaker actually did confirm that those were, like, he has it or he's seen the Switch 2, and he made a 3D mock-up of what it looks like, and especially in comparison to the original Switch. So those aren't official Nintendo documents. Those are his or her interpretation of what they saw. And so a lot of people get that misconstrued there. As for more details about what the leak actually entailed, the design of it is very reminiscent of the shell of the OLED, except it's a little bit bigger. The screen is about 8 inches compared to the Switch's 6 or 7. It is much bigger. Bezel is a lot smaller, again, based on the shell of the OLED, but it doesn't have an OLED screen, and I assume we're gonna get a Switch 2 OLED later down the line. Really hope so, because the OLED looks absolutely gorgeous. But we're still gonna have an LCD screen. But the biggest problem with the original Switch was that bezel in terms of the actual visual fidelity of the screen, not the console, right? So I'm glad that they're still getting rid of that bezel there. And then obviously the better kickstand, that's a huge plus coming from the Switch OLED there as well. The next major addition is that they actually added a charging port on the top as well, which is an absolutely fantastic addition, because I find myself many a time wanting to play it in tabletop mode, and it's dying, and it's like you can't really do that because the port is on the bottom. So having an additional port on the top would be great, and it, maybe leaves open some potential for different accessories and things coming from third-party developers. So that could be really interesting to see later down the line. Next up is the Joy-Cons themselves. There seems to be an additional button there on the right Joy-Con. Not really sure what that is supposed to be. Otherwise, largely the same. Again, the Joy-Cons are going to be bigger, which means that the original Joy-Con aren't going to be compatible in handheld mode. But that doesn't mean that they aren't going to be compatible via Bluetooth or whatever, because there was that one stand charger thing that Nintendo made. People are assuming it's probably for the Switch 2. It makes perfect sense, especially because the console is definitely going to be a lot bigger. They need the extra space in there for the internals for 4K resolution and things like that. We also got some internals. We have a new modern NVIDIA internals there, NVIDIA chips. 4K DLSS in dock mode, and in handheld mode 1080p 60, which, holy shit, that would be incredible if actual handheld mode would be locked at 1080p 60, because 1080p 60 is almost like, it's still the standard right now. I know a lot of consoles still have that 4K potential, but 4K is not really in every household at the moment, and I don't really think it will be a standard. I don't think that 1080p will be going away anytime soon, and it'll definitely be sticking around a lot longer than 720 or 480i, for example. It's gonna be around a while longer, I think, because the differences are marginal. right? And previously we didn't even have widescreen either, and so both of those formats sort of fit in tandem with each other. So having 1080p as a standard on handheld mode would be fantastic, and even getting frame rates up to 60 FPS is perfectly fine. And then having maybe even 124K in dock mode would be absolutely fantastic, and a huge bump up from the original Switch. Also, in terms of actual power, it's going to be right there in between the Xbox Series S and the PS5. So not too bad, right up there with the big boys, which is absolutely crazy. So I think we're going to be seeing a new Nintendo, at least from that perspective. I don't think that we'll see a Switch 2 Pro, but just having those basic standard baselines would be fantastic. So, and of course, we're probably still going to see a ton of, 30 FPS games, which I personally don't mind. A lot of people are going to be very angry at that, but I don't think it'll happen too often. My biggest concern with a lot of games is blocking that frame rate. I hate when games just drop frame rate, right? It would be a lot nicer and a lot better if your games just stayed. I don't care if your game is 30 FPS. I really do not care. Just keep it locked at that 30 FPS. A lot of people don't like the 30 FPS. I personally do not care. Just leave it there. Lock it. If you're like, I can't push 60, don't leave it unlocked. Just keep it there at that crisp 30. Okay, just leave it. Anyways, moving on from that, the Joy-Cons themselves have this weird little chip insert thing. People are speculating if it's like an SD card slot for additional storage. I don't know why. I feel like the next thing, which is that the Joy-Cons aren't on a rail anymore. They're magnets, which is something that we've been hearing for a long time now about the Switch 2. Doesn't really fit well with that argument, so I'm not really sure what that little chip hole insert is on the Joy-Con, but it is a huge welcome change is that the SL and SR buttons on the side of the Joy-Con are much bigger and much more tactile, which is absolutely fantastic. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it for the entirety of the Switch 2 leak. If you want to see more images, obviously check Twitter. Leave a link in the description below for all of my sources on what we're talking about here this week. And yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the PlayStation 30th anniversary. Right after the PS5 Pro was announced, they announced the 30th anniversary collection, which is essentially like classic PlayStation 1 styled PlayStations, and these look really clean, honestly. Like, personally, I probably am gonna cop that regular DualSense controller there. It looks pretty good, so I'm pretty excited about that. Not too much to talk about there. They just look good. They look like some clean controllers. So again, I should have an image on screen right behind me if you're interested in that. Anyways, next up is that there was a leak of a potential PlayStation remaster. Not sure what that is, but a couple of sources are saying that it could be Horizons 1, which, can you please stop doing that, Sony? Like, seriously, like, Horizons 1 is perfectly playable on PS5. We do not need a remaster of it. I'm tired of these Last of Us games getting remastered. You know what a game that needs a remaster? The original God of War trilogy. As a Sony fan, personally, recently getting into the PlayStation 5 with 2020 and 2022, I would love to be able to play all of the old games before hopping into the reboot duology. And then if you're getting ready with that DLC of Valhalla, if you're getting ready to release a third game in the reboot trilogy, it would be nice to have the original 3 games playable in a modern format. I would love for them to do a Crash Bandicoot style thing. More than likely, they're just going to up-res everything, but that's perfectly fine with me. Getting those games on the platform would be absolutely fantastic. Stop remastering games that came out like not only a few years ago. Stop doing that. It's annoying. Same thing with like GTA 5. Like, just at that point, just make more games. And there was nothing wrong with the GTA remaster collection. There was nothing wrong with that. Just they didn't really try, and they didn't do it right. So nothing wrong with these remasters and ports. But like, if you're like, okay, well, this game isn't on our platform, then just at the very least, just bring it over. Just port it. Don't do a shitty remaster. Like, if Horizon really wasn't on the PS5 and there was no way to play it, it would be fantastic. Perfect example is the TTYD remake that came out recently. That was perfect because DTYD hasn't been ported to another system in a long time. Technically, it was playable on the Wii, but having those prices just shoot up like it was nothing was ridiculous. So do less and do more things that we actually need, not want necessarily. Some people might want a Horizon remaster. We just don't need it right now. It's perfectly playable on PS5. But potentially we might be getting a state of play here in the next few weeks. I don't know why, because there was one literally like 3 months ago, but who knows? Maybe they do have something to share for us this here in the next few weeks. Next up is Pokemon finally sues Power World. That's been over a year that there's been rumblings that Nintendo maybe never are going to take them down, and it's finally happening, and they're finally taking down Power World. Now, a lot of people seem to speculate because there is a genuine issue here that a lot of the pals in the game take a little too much inspiration off of the original Pokemon. Personally, I wasn't a huge fan of Power World, but I think that after watching a lot of videos discussing the topic, I think it's fine. Competition is good for Pokemon because it should be pushing them to make better games, but they don't really have any competitors, because even like back in the day when their competitors like Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, they're not really their competitors anymore. They're vastly different from each other. And once that sort of trading card toy thing, anime game phase it kind of made its own genre out of that, which means that they're more distinct than Power World is to Pokemon. So they're able to kind of live in their own bubble, and so they're not really competitors to Pokemon anymore. Whereas Power World is a straight up competitor to Pokemon, like beat for beat. Now, the problem with Power World is that a lot of the things that they did was incredibly shady, bad, and inappropriate. A lot of the things in game, right, were absolutely garbage and broken as well. And well, I believe it did release in a beta state when we first started hearing about this game, but now I believe the game is full release and it's releasing live service updates as well, and the game still looks like garbage. So are they competing with Pokemon or trying to be Pokemon? That's what I'm not 100% sure with, because even all of Pokemon games seem to be absolutely terrible as of late. But more than that, again, mostly a lot of people were concerned about how the pals in the game were strikingly similar to a lot of Pokemon, and Nintendo would have a lot of grounds to sue them on that, but maybe they're just legally distinct enough that they can't. So they spent over a year trying to figure out how they can take these guys down, and supposedly they had found it. The patent that they chose to sue them upon is the act of catching monsters within the wild, similar to Legends Arceus. They believe that they patent that and that no one else can use it. I hate that. I hate that a lot, because as much as I'm not a huge fan of Power World, that again, competition breeds better games, right? Just having that competition makes you want to strive to do better things as a company, and Nintendo's not really doing that as of now because they don't have any other competitors. So patenting things and saying, nope, you can't do that, means you can't really have any competitors. So they finally found some base to sue Power World on, so kind of good for them for that, but like it's like a stupid thing that they're trying to get them for, so really? But the thing that makes me side with Nintendo a little bit here is that Power World released a statement, or Pocket Pair, the company that they're actually suing, saying that they don't know what they're being sued for. Excuse me? You don't know? You really don't know what you're being sued for? After over a year of just anxiously waiting for Nintendo to sue you, you don't know what you're being sued for, when they clearly laid it out for the public to see. Like, again, I don't think it's right that Nintendo's doing this, but they have some kind of grounds upon you, and you decided to release a public statement saying you don't know what patents? There's no way you're this arrogant, right? There's no way. It's impossible that you're this arrogant. So the part of me wants to side with Nintendo, because these people really, and it makes me believe that they straight up stole Pokemon designs and try to get around it because they're just arrogant people. And so I would really hate to come to that conclusion, but that's the type of feeling that I'm getting from a company that is this arrogant about what they're being sued upon. So that's just my 2 cents. I really hope Power World wins in the end, but part of me believes that because they're being this arrogant about it, Pokemon might have the edge here. So, rest in peace, Power World, if that ends up being the case, but just do better, please. Anyway, the final bit of news that came out this week is that Concord reportedly allegedly cost Sony around $400 million that went down the shitter, unfortunately. This whole thing with Concord is ridiculous. Like at first I was like, okay, this is like a hero shooter thing. It looked like garbage. They didn't really even try, but they gave it $400, a few years of development time, actually many years of development time, and this is the final result. This is a Cyberpunk 2077 issue here. Rushed game. Very, very basic genre. And there's nothing wrong with the genre, apparently. I thought it was, and they spent Marvel movie budgets on this thing, thinking that it was the next Sony Star Wars franchise for them, with infinite possibilities for spin-offs and sequels. And what the fuck is wrong with the gaming industry right now? There's the reason why we're seeing all of these layoffs within the industry is because these developers are spending so much time, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of development, and hundreds and hundreds of $1 million on development for these games that ultimately come out and don't sell very well or don't meet sales expectation. And because of that, the CEOs, the people that don't really give a fuck about video games, are not taking pay cuts. Look at Nintendo. Wow, they actually do something good. Not taking pay cuts for themselves and allowing the developers to do what they want to do and create art. And instead, they're like, you know what? It's your fault that we didn't sell very well because you made a shitty game. Get out. Which is absolutely atrocious that we've come to this point. I think that there is room for those AAA $100 million games every once in a while, but in between that, you make your smaller franchises. One of the biggest things about Concord was like Sony was complaining like, oh, this was our big thing this year. We don't have any IP. And then a week later, they released Astro Bot with literally a list of all of their IPs that they could potentially make games for. Imagine like a Ratchet and Clank releasing as frequently as they did back in the day. Maybe not as high a budget as Rift Apart, but just a little small games here and there, building Sony's repertoire up, building Sony's money up, and stacking their bread. And then a few years later, they're able to release a big God of War game or a big Last of Us game or things like that. These are smart decisions that they should be doing. Having all these small little games here or there and their franchises that have been sitting dormant for so long, small development cycles, small budgets, and then leading up to the next big game that comes out in a few years. Mind-blowing, am I right? Do I know a company that's doing that? Oh, isn't that Nintendo? Nintendo does this all the time. Nintendo, we have Echoes of Wisdom, which yes is a AAA game, but probably only had a few years of development time. It's based a lot upon Link's Awakening remake, and obviously they created a lot of new mechanics and stuff, but to me personally, this is one of those smaller titles in between big titles. The last big title that we realistically had was Tears of the Kingdom, and the next big title is probably going to be the 3D Mario game, which is going to launch with the Switch 2, and then after that, we're probably getting an Animal Crossing or Mario Kart 10. Those are the big Nintendo titles. And then in between there, we have the little Nintendo titles. The TTYD Remaster, the Luigi's Mansion 2, the Princess Peach Showtime, the Mario Wonder, and the Echoes of Wisdom. Having those little titles and franchises that I mean, there's a ton of Mario in that statement, but having little games and all of their franchises, this would be a great time for them to release a Star Fox or an F-Zero, which they technically did 2 years ago, last year, I can't remember. So having those little titles in between their big boy titles is exactly what Sony and other companies should be doing. And obviously Xbox is kind of on their own little plan right now, and we haven't really seen the full extent of what they want until the day that they're like, yeah, we're done making consoles. Then we'll finally kind of see the vision that they're going for, but they're kind of rubbing their greedy hands together and trying to concoct a master plan over there. So who knows what their long-term goals are. But Sony over here is like, well, we're on top, and they're being arrogant, cocky, and shooting themselves in the foot, and they don't have any fucking games to show for it. So, and the reason why I say they're on top is because they actually have a good console that is worth a damn. Like, they have something that they actually have an edge over Xbox for, and Xbox is obviously not even trying right now because they're, again, focusing on that xCloud and Game Pass. So, look to Nintendo for what they're doing. Because they clearly have a lot of money stored up in the bank, because right now they're still releasing games, and guess what? They're having successful movies. They're having successful theme parks. Sony ain't doing jack fucking shit right now. And there's delist. They don't even have any games because they're delisting stuff. So, come on. What are we doing here? Anyways, that's pretty much it for this week's headlines. I hope you guys enjoyed this brand new series. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. As always, all the links will be in the description below. And of course, to help support us and this series a lot more. And please help me support the series, because this is a kind of a brainchild of mine for a couple of months now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this format of the news. I'll try to keep it shorter next time, but this is the inaugural episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you want to support us, check us out on Patreon for even the $1 tier. You'll be helping support us and get better things and talk about more games and things of that nature. You can also help supporting us by using our code CrazyCat for 10% off at Dubby, a Gamer Energies drink. And of course, you can use our affiliate link in the description below as well. You can also find us on all of our socials. You can find me personally, youtube.com/@SlimeBoss21, I believe. And then my second channel, SlimeBoss Plus. Again, you can catch me streaming the Plucky Squire here in the next couple of days. So, or maybe even was yesterday. I'm not really sure. But again, if you want us to help support the series, please leave a like. And also, I'm going to probably including a brand new comments, the comment section, if you will. If you guys have any topics or news related that I did not cover in the main video, let me know in the comments down below of any topics that you want me to cover here at the end segment. But because we don't have any comments for this inaugural episode, this is what we got. So thank you guys so much for all the support that you've been giving us over the last few videos. Of course, you can check out the last week's podcast, which is the 2024 check-in. I'll have a link to that right on the top of the description as well. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. I have been your host, Shaden. This is Fairy Fountain News live from the Crazy Cap Studios, and I'll see you guys next week.